Now, up to this point in this section here, we worked on a React application and therefore in the end in JavaScript code. And just to be very clear, GitHub Copilot works with any programming language. It's not limited to JavaScript. And it therefore, for example, also works with CSS to add some styling to the website, but you also could use it with C++, C#, Java, Go, whatever you want. But here I want to use it with CSS to add some styling to this website. For example, to style some buttons and this footer. And I'll start with the footer. For that, I'll go here to this index CSS file, and then, for example, at the very end of this file, we can get GitHub Copilot to make some suggestions by typing out a CSS selector, for example, footer. And this, of course, already gives GitHub Copilot an idea of what I'm trying to style, and it then simply makes some suggestions based on experience it has from other projects, for example, and of course also based on the remaining code I have in this file and in this project. And it therefore here suggested that I might want to add some spacing to the top and that I might want to center my text. And indeed, this is something I'd like to have here. And therefore, if I save this, now this footer here is centered. And therefore, next I want to work on these buttons and also add some styles to those. Now for that, I'll first of all take a look at the code, the React code, where I output these buttons. And that's in the end here in the app.jsx file, in this section, which has an ID of examples. I have that menu element, and in there I have my tab button component, which in the end just wraps the built-in button element. And therefore back in index CSS to add some styling here, I can target the element that has the ID examples and then the menu and then the buttons inside of that menu, and I'm automatically getting some suggestions by GitHub Copilot here. Now, of course, you might be getting different suggestions. Indeed, it's quite likely that you're getting different suggestions. But here for me, it suggested this block of code. And if I save that, those buttons indeed already look much nicer. But now I'd also like to have some styling when I hover over these buttons and when I select a button. Now, when I select a button, as you can see in the tab button component, this active CSS class will be added conditionally to that button. So therefore, we can add new CSS rules here, and it actually even starts suggesting some rules here for me. For example, that I might want to add some hover styles, and here it actually got multiple variations through which I can cycle, and I'll accept the first variation. And I can get another suggestion by starting a new line, and here it even understands that there is this active CSS class, which is added here in the tab button component, and therefore, when working in the CSS file, it suggested this rule here to me because it guessed that I might want to style this active state as well. And I do want to style that, but here I actually want to have a more purplish color, so I'll switch to that. But with this, you see, the active tab is highlighted, and if I hover over a tab, this also has a slightly different look. And this CSS code here was now also generated by GitHub Copilot and then tweaked by me. And especially since many web developers don't like working with CSS, GitHub Copilot can be a huge help when it comes to styling your applications. But as mentioned, it's also not limited to CSS and web development in general, but you can instead use it with any programming language.